you are on assignment.
We'll keep increasing same.
I like people coming early.
Now, a behind-the-scenes look. Hello and welcome to On Assignment. I'm Alex Villarreal.
And I'm Imran Siddiqui. First up, big financial troubles in Greece. What's in store for Europe and the global economy?
We'll talk again with a VOA journalist who was in Cairo for Egypt's historic presidential election.
Looking for gold in Cambodia's forests and its dangers for miners and the environment.
And a maize mystery. What's been killing corn in some parts of Kenya?
We'll get you behind the scenes to look at these stories, so join us as we go on assignment. Greece is still struggling to overcome its crippling debt crisis. With recent elections inconclusive, the country is now left with a coalition government that must tackle its unrelenting economic problems.
And first on the new government's agenda, renegotiating the tough bailout conditions imposed by international lenders. Now, of course, Greece is not the only nation that's affected by this. So for more on how what's happening in Greece could affect the rest of us, I talked with VOA's Mil Arcega.
Greece is now in the fifth year of a recession, a situation some say is tantamount to a full-blown depression. Economist Yanis Varoufakis says it's clear that austerity measures demanded by the IMF and the European Union in exchange for two bailouts have hindered rather than helped the Greek economy.
The current bailout terms and conditions have already been bypassed by economic reality. So every prediction and every hypothesis on which they were founded, those conditions has completely gone to the dogs.
Mil, the whole world has been watching this saga unfold now for years. What's going on now?
Greece finally has a government after two very inconclusive elections. It's a pro-bailout government that is a party coalition made up of three different parties, led by a former American economist, actually, Antonis Samaras, who now has the unenviable task of trying to cobble together a working government that will make some very, very tough decisions over the long run to solve this fiscal crisis that we call the European debt crisis, centered primarily in Greece.
What's at stake here?
What's at stake is really the whole global economy.
Despite a series of expensive bailouts to four Eurozone countries, borrowing costs have risen to unsustainable levels in high-debt countries such as Italy and Spain. Varoufakis says without a unified and growth-centered approach to the region's debt crisis, a Greek exit from the Eurozone may be just the beginning.
Unless we do those things, there will be no Eurozone to speak of.
And why is that? You know, being such a small economy, how is it that Greece has such a wide-ranging influence and impact?
It's a good question. You know, you've got a country there of 11 million people, annual economic output of about $300 billion. Very small country. But the problem is, it is the weakest link in a larger union called the Eurozone. And when you're the weakest link of 17 different countries, if that link breaks, there's a tendency for the other ones to follow. And because Europe, as an economic bloc, is really the largest trading partner of the United States, if that currency union is at risk, if it's in danger of collapsing, so is much of global trade, so is much of the global economy.
Much will depend on Germany. The bloc's biggest economy has already opened up the possibility of extending some payment deadlines. But at the G20 summit in Mexico, Chancellor Angela Merkel reiterated her belief that the basic conditions of the deal, essentially a sharp and timely reduction of Greece's debt to GDP ratio, is not negotiable.
If Greece does exit the Eurozone, who loses the most?
Everybody would lose, but I would have to say that the Greek people would probably lose the most. You would see an immediate return to the drachma. You would probably see the drachma trading initially on the first day at about 1-to-1 with the euro. But immediately after that, you would see a rapid drop in that currency. You would see it depreciate maybe 50%, perhaps even more, meaning the drachma will not be able to buy as much as it could, as much as it did. So prices will skyrocket. Unemployment is going to go through the roof in Greece. Soup lines are going to be a matter of course for everyone. But even before that happens, Greece's banks would have probably failed already as people pull out.
We are afraid about the future. That is the biggest problem we have, because you know, a little unknown, the future.
You would probably see a major collapse of a lot of banks, not just in Greece, but in Europe, and the impact of that will definitely be felt across the pond.
And I think that is a major
States.
question for a lot of people is, if Greece exits the Eurozone, if the worst case scenario occurs, how is that going to affect us outside of the country?
What you're seeing is really a very complicated global picture here. You're seeing Asia, which has been the fastest growing part of this global economy, significantly slowing down in growth. And that's largely the result of a lack of confidence in what's going on in Europe. You're seeing unemployment here in the United States already being impacted. Business confidence is at an all-time low. We have a fiscal union, the Eurozone, that's comprised of 17 different countries.
So there's this interconnectedness that's
There's this
playing a role.
interconnectedness here. So what would you do if one of those countries fail? In other words, everybody has to sort of pitch in now. But the problem is you have 17 different political leaders, some more powerful than others.
Right, exactly. Well, Mil, thank you so much. We really appreciate
very welcome.
you joining us. Again, Mil Arcega, VOA's business reporter.
It's time for a break. Coming up, VOA's Davin Hutchins is back from Cairo.
Egypt has a new president. So what's next? You're watching On Assignment.
Egyptians went to the polls on June 16th and 17th in an historic presidential election following the ouster last year of longtime leader Hosni Mubarak. Davin Hutchins is editor of the VOA MiddleEastVoices.com website. He was in Cairo for the big event and joins us again on this show. Thank you so much for joining me. I just want to correct myself here. Editor-in-chief or managing editor of MiddleEastVoices.com. In one of your pieces, I heard you say that it was a silent coup. What did you mean by that?
Well, that was a phrase being tossed around by the press for about 2 days in there, and that was between the time when the Supreme Constitutional Court actually dissolved the parliament. It looked as if Ahmed Shafiq and Mohamed Morsi were neck and neck, and then SCAF also absorbed a lot of legislative and budgetary powers before the elections for itself. It looked as there would be no powers left for the president to use after that. Things got really tense about in the last 2 days there because people were thinking if for some reason Shafiq does win or if SCAF does something with the vote or delays it, then it really would be all over. And that's why there were about 70,000 people in Tahrir Square on the 20th, the day after when Morsi already presumed that he would be president. So yes, it's still not clear what type of powers that Morsi will have as the new president, but he has taken oath. He is in Mubarak's old office, and Shafiq is now out of the country, actually, in the Persian Gulf. So he is the president. What powers he will have remains to be seen.
What do you think his first few weeks in the office would look like? His challenges, his priorities?
Well, the main thing he has to do is Muslim Brotherhood has different connotations with different people in Egypt. For people who are more fundamentalist or more religious in their worldview, this is a godsend to have somebody who was outlawed, the organization outlawed for 80 years, to finally have somebody who's president. But to liberals, to secularists, even some Coptic Christians, they're worried that there will be something that favors Muslim values, Muslim criminal codes and so forth somehow throughout society, and they need to be reassured. So the first thing that Mohamed Morsi needs to do, and he's already made overtures to do this, is to be inclusive by saying we are going to welcome Copts, which are the local Christians, into our administration. Women's rights will be preserved. I think he plans on, he's announced that he may have a woman vice president, and there will likely be women in the cabinet that he appoints. So the first thing he has to do is to let Egyptians know that this isn't just in Egypt for Muslims or political Islamists, but for everyone. And he's gone out of his way to do that. I think the second thing he has to do, which has begun already, is to reassure the markets and reassure that there's more stability coming back to Egypt. Right now, Egypt is in its third or fourth day of the index actually going up, the Egyptian bourse, which didn't happen for a long time because they see that there is a president and the election is over. Yeah. But also there's, everyone we talk to on the street, unemployment was a huge issue. A third of Egyptians are unemployed. Not having quality education, not having proper health care. So he has to reassure people politically and reassure SCAF that he's there for an inclusive Egypt, but then he has to start tackling the difficult things, which are primarily economic. Do
you think he's going to limit the role of SCAF?
Well, what's interesting, I think, I don't know if he's going to have that power, as I said earlier. SCAF is going to determine, as of now, who's going to sit on the Constituent Assembly to draft the new Constitution. Depending on who they pick and what they say, they will kind of determine what powers the president will have in a few months' time. And then also has to be put to referendum. But what's more interesting is the kind of muscle that the Supreme Constitutional Court is doing. I mean, it was the court that dissolved the parliament a week before the election, not SCAF. And it's also the court that overturned a recent decision by SCAF to allow the Army to do detentions. Just a couple days ago, they said, no, the Army doesn't have that ability. So I think you're actually going to see something similar to several branches of government balancing themselves out.
Davin Hutchins, Managing Editor for MiddleEastVoices.com. Thank you so much for joining us. Coming up after the break, what kinds of risks are miners taking to look for gold in Cambodia's forests? You're watching On Assignment.
All right, welcome back to On Assignment. I'm Alex Villarreal here with Imran Siddiqui, and we're coming to you from Washington. The United Nations estimates that some 20 million people around the world are digging for gold to escape poverty. But many of these mines are unsafe and pollute the environment with dangerous chemicals.
But in Cambodia, small-scale gold mining is the main source of income for thousands of people. Mony of Khmer Service recently traveled to remote province to meet a few of them. Here's what he saw.
This man, who looks like he's trapped in a well, is actually looking for gold. This crude operation typifies the dangers of unregulated small-scale gold mining. Shafts are poorly constructed and ventilated. The miners wear no protective clothing. This place is called Forest of Gold and draws poor farmers seeking their fortune. But fortune is hard to find.
On lucky days, we might find almost 4 grams. On others, barely 2 grams. On unlucky days, we may only come up with a half a gram.
Mony, you began your report at a gold mine in Ratanakiri province in Cambodia. But to call it a mine seems a bit of a step too far. It looked like a giant hole in the ground. Can you tell us, what it is that you saw there? Take us there.
In that remote part of the country, you see several gold mines there. And while you were there, you can see a gold mine as deep as 35 millimeters from above the ground. And of course, there are a lot of people there who work tirelessly, in the sun, and they were trying to find that precious metal, even though they do not really know the danger, of their work.
In your report, you talk about the dangers of working in these mines. I think some of them are very obviously, they look rickety to say the best. What are some of the other dangers for the workers down in these gold mines?
Right, they are taking a great risk, I must say, because they can be hit by falling rocks when they go deep down, and they have to get exposed, to mercury and other chemicals which are used to purify gold. And also, in addition to that, they are prone to malaria infection because this is the rainy season here in Cambodia. There's a lot of mosquitoes out there.
Some of the miners have come down with malaria. This is the season for the disease.
The mercury poses a danger beyond the mining sites as it travels through the air and water. Local environmental and human rights organizations are calling for regulation as well as education.
In mining, you get exposed to chemicals that can affect your health. That's why we need mining experts to properly train these miners.
So, Mony, what is the government doing, or what are private industries doing to help bring some protections for these people, not just in terms of building the mines, but keeping them healthy and keeping these elements like mercury out of the water?
Right, so far actually these gold mining activities are illegal as they are not licensed by the government. But rather than regulating these mines, the Cambodian government discourages them and pays more attention to big scale mining companies instead. And so the environmentalists and local rights workers suggest detailed policy and regulation for these small-scale gold mining activity should be prepared and put in place.
Mony, there is no doubt a lot of hard labor in Cambodia, much of which I know you've seen in your travels around the country. How does this activity stack up with the kinds of other challenges that are facing Cambodians?
You know, if you are poor and you are a farmer and you have very little plot of land, you cannot just survive on that land. So the only thing you do is just try to find a better opportunity, no matter whether that is dangerous. You know, you need to feed yourself, you need to feed your family. So of course these people know how dangerous their works are, but they have no choice.
Well, Mony Sai, this was an eye-opening report. Thank you so much for bringing it to us. Mony Sai is a reporter with VOA's Khmer service.
Thank you.
Again, that was VOA's Mony Sai speaking with Doug Bernard from Phnom Penh. Turning now to Kenya, in small farming communities, there's a mystery concerning maize. Corn plants are dying of a disease no one seems to know much about.
Most farmers in Kenya's South Rift Valley have been affected, and there are concerns that the mysterious maize disease will spread and affect the food supply. Alex Pena is following the story, and he talked with us via Skype from Nairobi.
Basically, anything that was planted in December and early January of this year has not grown to its fullest potential. So the government is calling this an unfamiliar disease. Basically, it's a mysterious disease that farmers haven't seen that is stunting the growth of their crops.
Holding what is a sign of his dying maize crop, a farmer in the Kenyan community of Bomet is now entangled in a maize mystery.
Everything has been affected. The 5 acres, all of it, the way is all affected.
So today on his small farm, he has visitors. Local farming leader Siggy Aaron, Assistant Police Chief Samson Negatesh, and David Miamino, the CEO of a Cereal Growers Association in Nairobi.
They give us information that the first rain on January, there must be something.
With the rain?
With the rain.
Okay.
I think there was a supply of the wrong seed.
Does any of the maize survive in the affected crops?
That's one of the reasons that this disease is so mysterious. And some farms you have about half affected, half not affected. And some other farms, they are completely affected, and the farm next door is not affected at all. So some are surviving, some aren't. But for the most part, majority of the farms are becoming completely affected.
Miamino considers himself a maize expert, and today, a maize investigator.
At this stage, this could be green maize already at this time, but there is no maize. As you can see, this is what should have been maize, and is already dead.
The Kenyan government estimates that 40% or more of Kenya's maize crop in the South Rift Valley has been affected. Stopping the mysteriously spreading disease is Niamino's #1 priority.
Now, the Kenyan government is saying that this corn may be fed to animals. Has anyone become sick from eating this corn?
Officially, the government is saying that no person has become ill or either animal has become ill from eating this. But one of the big issues with this disease is the rumors that are being spread. It's being affected in really rural areas. So some of the farmers believe that people are becoming ill and that they shouldn't feed it to the animals. But in fact, the latest news from the government is that it is okay to feed it to the animals.
The area that gives Kenya real maize is in the North Rift. If this disease appears in the North Rift, then Kenya will be becoming hopeless in terms of food. And in food here, Kenyans believe maize is the food security for the country.
I've tried the maize and I had it just a few miles down the road from where the farm is at, and I'm perfectly fine. And I guarantee that some of the farmers have eaten it. But the recommendation is do not eat the maize.
Do you think the people in the South Rift Valley are in imminent danger?
At this point right now, they're trying to plant and harvest other crops. So there's no imminent danger right now. In fact, they've successfully planted sweet potatoes and millet and other staple food for Kenya. So at this point, I wouldn't say there's any imminent danger for the people in the South Rift.
What are they doing in terms of efforts to contain it? Is there a possibility it might spread to other parts of Kenya?
Right now, the only recommendation that farmers have is to uproot their crops.
It's unclear what makes the disease spread. Some say wind, others say insects, some say both, plus a lack of information.
What is lacking here is awareness of what should be done, and the messages, you can see the farmers are contradicting. They're saying that the stock, they have been advised that the stock should not be fed to animals. But the current information we have from the government is that there is no problem to feed the animals with the stock.
So the idea of uprooting it is that since they're not sure how it's being spread, that hopefully it's not being spread through the roots and it won't spread north. But there have been cases in central Kenya in the past week that another affected disease has shown up in some farms there. Now, they're not sure if it's that particular disease, but the NGOs and the government is doing anything they can to spread more information to the farmers in that area to make sure that the disease isn't spread there. This is also another central area for all the maize in Kenya.
Do the farmers have any alternatives in terms of what would happen if the crops are infected?
There are some farmers right now, including somebody you saw in my story, who's created this test field.
Local farming leader Siggy Aaron planted a test field in search of answers. He successfully grew sweet potatoes here, and in the same field as the disease-infected maize, he grew millet, another staple food for Kenya. It's a positive sign for a dire situation. Assistant Police Chief Sansam Negatesh is predicting the worst.
We are fearing children might not go to school next time, and also there is no food for the community. So we need help.
Meanwhile, in order to save lives and solve the mystery, this group will continue investigating, looking for a cause.
Thanks again to Alex Pena reporting for us from Nairobi. And now to Ukraine, where members of parliament have been fighting over the status of the Russian language in the country, but it's actually English that's becoming more popular there and without any prodding from the government.
The Euro 2012 Soccer Championship, co-hosted by Ukraine and Poland, is one factor having an impact on Ukrainians becoming trilingual. Anna Porolenko has more in this week's full-feature story.
Euro 2012 has changed Ukrainians' daily routine, especially those who live in the host cities. The championship has attracted many tourists to the country who remind Ukrainians that while the national parliament struggles to decide which language they should speak, Russian or Ukrainian, more and more people around the world are turning to English, especially in international business. With that in mind, some Ukrainians on their own have begun speaking and running their business using several languages.
We organize many tours with English-speaking guides, but most of them are still ordered by some self-organized travel groups that are coming here to Kiev.
The Ukrainian capital is also switching to English. The names of subway stations are now announced in Ukrainian and English, and all the signs are in both languages. And restaurant owners have added a few extra menus in English to those they already have.
Last year when I was here, everything was in Ukrainian. Now everywhere in the subway, for example, all the signs are in English, and also the speaker voice is in Ukrainian and English. And you can really tell that the town has tried to welcome the tourists.
Ukrainians are sometimes surprised by how well soccer fans from abroad speak English, even though it's not their national language.
Англійська мова – це зараз просто необхідність, оскільки
English language is a must these days. It doesn't matter in which field you work, you can find it connected with English.
те, що зростає, прям збільшується з якогось.
The quantity of people speaking English is increasing with the speed of sound. I know people who don't speak English. They start attending language schools. Almost everyone now speaks English. Let's take journalism. Knowing English is one of the most important skills for the job.
With the flow of tourists to Kiev, local residents are seeing the important role the English language plays, even with the course of watching soccer games in their home country. As a result, Ukrainians are finding they're going back to their school years, trying to come up with a few English phrases, if only to explain to foreign fans why the Ukrainian team they are cheering for will win. Anna Porolenko for VOA News.
And that's a wrap for us today. Next week, we're going to tell you all about a landmark survey done by VOA's Somali service.
And we'll be talking about Sharia loans, a big controversy there. We'll check out what's the deal with that. But you can catch all of our episodes on voanews.com. There's a programs tab right there. You can click on that. And of course on Facebook as well.
On behalf of all of us here at On Assignment, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.